Welcome to our presentation for the implementation and evaluation of family engagement activities for N.E.A.T Harvest. This project was created by myself, Caroline, Lexi, and Savannah. Here's an overview of our presentation today. We will begin with a summary of the community assessment completed last semester, then move into an update on the project, our implementation plan, goals and objectives, the logic model, and then finally the data collection, analysis, and results. We want to thank Abigail Ford from the Knox County Health Department and Dr. Marcia Spence for helping guide us in completing this project. Before we get into the project, we wanted to provide some background information on N.E.A.T. N.E.A.T stands for Nutrition Education Activity Training. The goal of N.E.A.T is to teach and promote healthy eating behaviors among youth in Knox County. The program works with after-school sites such as the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, and Shades of Development, and has now reached over 1,000 children in after-school sites. This is an overview of the standout secondary data collected last semester in the community assessment that looked for information on fruit and vegetable intake for adults and students. The most recent data found states in 2015 that 12.2% of American adults met fruit recommendations and 9.3% met vegetable recommendations. For students, the 2017 Youth Risk Behavior Survey found 7.9% of students in Knox County had not consumed a vegetable in the last week. The secondary data further supports the primary data we will discuss next, that there is a lack of fruit and vegetable intake in adults and student diets alike. Primary data was gathered from a survey completed by the adults who picked the students up from participating after-school sites. Data was gathered by the adults for both themselves and the students in the household. This data shows results for the adults themselves. This shows majority of adults consumed fruit less than once per day, leafy green vegetables or a salad less than once per day, and other vegetables around once per day. This is below the CDC recommendations, which are 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 4 cups of vegetables per day. This table shows results for the students' intake. Majority of intake was reported as follows. Fruit was tied as less than once per day and more than once per day. Salads were mostly consumed less than once per day, and other vegetables were consumed on mostly once per day. Both primary and secondary data collected last semester raised a need for intervention to increase the consumption of fruits and vegetables. Since our community assessment presentation last semester on produce boxes, the program has since been implemented and given the name N.E.A.T Harvest. The N.E.A.T Harvest program is a partnership between the Knox County Health Department, the YMCA of East Tennessee, and Second Harvest Food Bank of East Tennessee. As part of the program, all students at participating YMCA after-school sites receive a variety box of fresh fruits and vegetables free of charge each month. The 3 participating sites are Green Magnet Elementary, Pleasant Ridge Elementary, and West Hills Elementary. Students also participate in monthly educational hands-on activities such as taste tests and cooking demonstrations that use fresh fruits and vegetables to help build the students' familiarity and taste preferences for the fresh produce that they are taking home. This program aims to help students and their families eat and enjoy more fruits and vegetables as part of an overall healthy lifestyle. Our work on this project was to support the monthly hands-on activities that accompanied each produce box. The activities are meant to engage the whole family, promote fruit and vegetable intake, incorporate the boxes and produce, and be long-lasting and reusable. One activity is to be incorporated in each box. We've created 2 activities, one that has already been added to a box and one that has been added to a bank to be used in the future. Along with the activities, we also created a N.E.A.T Harvest Pinterest page. Pinterest can be described as a way to share creative ideas such as recipes. The ideas on Pinterest are called pins. These pins can be saved to users' personal boards, making them a website for a digital pin board. Organization of boards and pins are up to the user's choice. The pins hold links to gain more information on the picture or video serving as the actual pin. Users are also able to comment and like other users' pins, whether they are resaved from another user or uploaded themselves. With the use of pictures and videos, Pinterest intrigues those who enjoy visual experience more than reading. Pinterest was used by the University of Regina's library as a way of outreach and was noted to be useful for them to engage in outreach and education. This page will allow for a one-stop place for households to find NEAT approved recipes that include fresh produce that they may see in their boxes. Pictured here are the 3 Pinterest boards created so far, one for kid-friendly recipes, which are geared more towards kids, and one for fruit and one for vegetables. While recipes have already been added to the page, it could be continually added to with existing recipes already on Pinterest and with pictures or videos of recipes uploaded from the Neat Harvest team. All pins on the page meet NEAT meal and snack criteria, which includes that snack must be 150 to 300 calories, less than 10% of calories from saturated fat, and less than 35% of calories from total sugar, and the meal criteria, which includes 550 to 650 calories, less than 10% of calories from saturated fat, and less than 1,230 milligrams of sodium. In order for households to find the Pinterest page, a QR code leading to the page was included in the March distribution box. The fruit and veggie calendar was the activity that was added to the March produce box. This activity was done during the after-school time. Students assembled a cookbook with healthy fruit and vegetable recipes with space for them to create their own family recipes at home. The produce calendar was included as one of the pages in the cookbook. Students decorated their cookbook and talked through the activity with the NEAT educator, and then took the cookbook home to complete the fruit and vegetable calendar. This slide shows a picture of the calendar and stickers included. The idea for the calendar is to be displayed in a common area in the household, such as the kitchen, and each day the student eats a fruit or vegetable to add a sticker to that day of the week. The other activity in is the Rainbow Scavenger Hunt, which has been added to the activity bank and will be completed later this year. This activity was originally thought to be completed at the farmer's market, but we've expanded to state that it can be completed at any grocery store as well. If completed at the farmer's market, there could be possible collaboration with Nourish Kids to promote student use of produce bucks. To complete this activity, students will receive a list of produce of different colors, and they can look for them wherever they complete this activity.
Thank you for that, Caroline. So for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to go over the goals and objectives of this project. So the overall goal of the NEAT Harvest program, as Caroline mentioned, was to increase fruit and vegetable intake among students in Knox County and their households. Specifically, our portion of the project aimed to increase family engagement in the NEAT Harvest program, doing this through activities that were supplied within the produce boxes in March and April. Some objectives that we set for ourselves, a process objective of in the March produce box to have a QR code for the Pinterest page to allow access for all of the families, and then our one activity to be included as well. And then additionally, a process objective was that in the beginning of April, a survey would be distributed to students to gauge fruit and vegetable consumption along with the evaluation of the program. And for our outcome objectives, upon completion of the first semester of the NEAT Harvest program, we set a goal of 50 students to report, that 50% of students would report consuming more fruits and vegetables than they did at the beginning of the program. And additionally, that 50% of the students would report participating in the family engagement activities that we included within the box. We put our logic model in here just because it is kind of a key component to help us inform our engagement projects. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight here are the inputs that we received. So this project could not have been possible without the YMCA after school programs and the Second Harvest staff and volunteers. So Second Harvest actually assembled and delivered the boxes along with acquiring the produce for them. And then the YMCA after school programs and the NEAT educators that were at those sites helped us to gather our surveys and data. And then when we were thinking about our activities, we wanted to make sure that we were very cautious and aware of the household situations. So the Pinterest board is kind of aimed towards catering to people who don't know necessarily how to cook or how to store their produce and everything. So we wanted to go that route because those are very detailed posts and recipes. And then additionally, all of the activities that we did were very cautious of home situations. So everything's a Monday through Friday. We didn't try to put any pressure on students to report anything from their weekends. We just wanted it to be very user friendly. So as Caroline mentioned, we did use the Pinterest page and we obtained the web analytics from that. Since it was a business page, they reported all of the activity for the page for us. And then we had the handwritten survey, which Lexi will go over the results of a little bit later on. But that was taken by the students at the sites given by the N.E.A.T educators. For the handwritten survey, just a brief overview of what it looked like is it had 10 fruits and vegetables listed. And then students were to rank whether they didn't like them or they did like them. And then additionally, there were 2 questions about trying new foods or cooking and preparing new foods. So research has shown that in addition to access to fruits and vegetables, a number of individual factors influence consumption, such as the taste and preference for these fruits and vegetables. So children being willing to try the new foods leads to higher self-efficacy and a higher intake of fruit and vegetables. So that's why the N.E.A.T harvest activities are designed to provide students with the positive exposures to various fruits and vegetables in order to help them build these taste preferences. So that was the activities such as the cooking demonstrations and the taste tests that were performed during the after school activities. And then the survey was kind of used to inform how this program would continue. So it was better for us to be able to hand this information off to Second Harvest and they could know kind of what students were more excited about and preferred in their boxes. And then the second half of the survey asked how often they ate fruits and vegetables, what was the favorite thing that they received in the boxes, and then some questions about our family engagement activities, which include like, have you planned to, or have you participated, or do you plan to participate in these activities? So the Pinterest analytics were drawn on April 28th. There was no engagement or interaction from families on our Pinterest page. That included no followers, no visitors to the page, and no engagement with our pins. However, it is important to note that since this information and access to the page was only given out in the March box, which was the last Friday of the month, there wasn't a long period of time for there to be interaction. So there's hope that this will go up later on.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Savannah. The data was collected at both Pleasant Ridge and Shenandoah Elementary YMCA after school programs. Pleasant Ridge was our N.E.A.T harvest site, receiving the standard N.E.A.T lessons and the produce box. Shenandoah participated in the traditional N.E.A.T lessons, but not the additional N.E.A.T harvest program. We collected surveys from both programs to see if there were any differences in knowledge or behavior changes between students receiving the N.E.A.T intervention and those who participated in the N.E.A.T harvest as well. A total of 27 surveys were collected, 13 from Pleasant Ridge and 14 from Shenandoah. So here's just our fruit data. So one of the goals of N.E.A.T harvest is to increase the students' taste preferences for both fruits and vegetables. This is the data analyzed from the survey using the surveys completed by the students. This is a table comparing the amount of fruits that were reported liking by the students at both sites. The survey had 5 fruits listed on them and the students rated their liking. By finding the mean of the rating for all students given by the students, then dividing the number by 5, which was the total amount of fruits asked about on the survey, this gave us an average of 70% of fruits liked by the group receiving N.E.A.T harvests, with a mean of 3.54, and that is out of the 5 fruits. And for Shenandoah, we saw that 64% of the group reported liking fruits, and that is just with them receiving N.E.A.T lessons, and with a mean of 3.21. The N.E.A.T produce box participants' favorite fruits. This is important to know that this is one of the questions on the back of the survey. that is directed towards the produce box or Pleasant Ridge students only. We just thought this was very important data to see and show so we can see which fruits the children like the most in their boxes. We added this question just to see some of the favorite fruits so we can try to push more towards those fruits in their boxes because we want the kids to enjoy the fruits they were receiving. This is just a data analysis for vegetables, and this part of the survey was completed the same way as the fruits. The mean or the average fruit of the students reported liking out of 5 was 2.77%. By dividing the average rating of liking vegetables by 5, this shows that 56% of vegetables were liked by N.E.A.T students that received the additional N.E.A.T harvest, and 34% liked by students only receiving the N.E.A.T lessons. The mean for the students only receiving the N.E.A.T lessons was 1.77, and these findings were significant with a p-value of 0.009, indicating that there is statistically significant differences between the two schools. The effect size of the group of data was a large, meaning that the meaningful findings, the students received N.E.A.T harvests like 0.997 standard deviations from vegetables than the standard N.E.A.T lessons group. Once again, this was just a question for the group receiving the produce box. As they received, we asked which vegetable they liked most from their box. And this was just to get us to see which vegetables they like the most so we can try to get them to push more for these in their produce boxes. The combined data is for both fruits and vegetables. For these ratings, the mean of fruits and vegetables liked was divided by 10 because there were 5 fruits and 5 vegetables on the survey. Results showed that the N.E.A.T harvest students liked 63% of fruits and vegetables, while the N.E.A.T lesson only reported liking 50% of the fruits and vegetables. The p-value and the effect size for the data is again significant. This shows that students receiving N.E.A.T harvest had a higher taste preference for fruits and vegetables than students not receiving the produce boxes. Surveys were completed by a few of the students at both sites in February before N.E.A.T harvest began. Questions on this survey asked about the frequency of fruit and vegetables intake. On our survey administered in April, we included the same questions to see if there was a difference in their responses by the students. 64% of students from Pleasant Ridge Elementary reporting eating more fruits after receiving 2 months of standard N.E.A.T lessons and N.E.A.T harvest lessons, while 40% of students from Shenandoah Elementary School reported eating more fruits after receiving 2 months of standard N.E.A.T lessons. And this is just a change in consumption for vegetables. So once again, there was a survey offered in February and in April just to see the difference of consumption between the time period. And the data showed that 88% of students from Pleasant Ridge Elementary School reported eating more vegetables after receiving 2 months of standard N.E.A.T lessons with the N.E.A.T harvest lessons added. And 40% of the students from Shenandoah Elementary School reporting eating more vegetables after receiving 2 months of just the standard N.E.A.T lessons. Other questions that were on the back of the survey, so once again, just the produce box group, which was Pleasant Ridge. And one of the questions was, have you ever tasted a new fruit or vegetable this school year that you haven't before? And the data showed that 76.9% of the students, which was 10 out of 13, have reported that they have tasted a new fruit or vegetable. And then another question was, have you or your family cooked a new recipe this school year that you haven't had before? And the data showed that 30.8 or 4 out of 13 kids reported that they have tried a new recipe this school year. And then the last question we thought was interesting to add was, did you do the fruit and vegetable tracker activity from last week's N.E.A.T activity? And we saw that 62.9% of the students reported yes, and 3 reported not yet, but I plan to, and that was out of 13 students.
Thank you for that, Lexi. So now we're going to revisit our goals and objective after looking at all of our data. So we were able to distribute our QR code for Pinterest and that first activity of the produce calendar in the March produce box like we had planned. And then we were able to distribute the survey again in March with 27 total responses from Shannondale and Pleasant Ridge Elementary combined. Additionally, 64% of students reported eating more fruit and 88% reported eating more vegetables after receiving the 2 months of the N.E.A.T harvest programming, and that was at Pleasant Ridge Elementary. And then finally, 46.2% of students reported starting the produce calendar engagement activity in the March produce box, and an additional 23.1% said they plan to start it in the future. So this goal wasn't quite met, but with more time, it seems that it will be. Some strengths and limitations that are important to note for this project. We were surveying students in real time, so that allowed us to get a more accurate idea of how the students were engaging with the activities that we were providing. We did try to keep everything very sensitive to food securities and the individual's family. And then there were long-lasting and reusable interventions. So the Pinterest board can continually be updated. These different activities that we're providing can be reused. And then the students who were surveyed received some produce boxes and some did not. So we were able to kind of compare 2 groups and see if there was an effect from our intervention. Limitations to our project included the lack of time for the promotion of the Pinterest page. As I mentioned, it was only available for a couple of weeks. So hopefully as it's out there longer, it will actually receive more activity. And then additionally, as we mentioned with our previous goal, that some of the students hadn't yet begun the additional activities in the box. So with more time, hopefully that will also be improved on. There was self-reported data gathered, and so there's always that response bias there. And then we had a lower number of student surveys. Since we only surveyed at 2 schools and only one of them was a harvest school, there wasn't that many responses, but hopefully as this program continues and more schools get involved, we'll be able to gather more data and to rerun some of this. And then there weren't enough pre-surveys done to compare the data. So only certain students did a pre-survey, and so we weren't able to use that to compare pre and post as well as we would have liked to. And then in conclusion, some important points to note looking back is that more data could be collected about the consumption of the produce within the boxes. So we gathered a little bit of data about what students preferred and how they liked what they got, but more could be gathered, and that could help the individuals at Second Harvest to maybe just be more specific with what they purchase. Students still not consuming the daily recommendations for both fruits and vegetables. So that's always something that we're going to strive to increase. We could explore other social media options for family engagement. Since Pinterest didn't go over as well as we had hoped, we could try to stretch that out to a different social media network. And then with working with students, in-person surveying was the best way for us to collect the data. And we did get a really good response rate from the students, but again, we would like to have more students involved. So here are our references, and that concludes our presentation. Thank you.